Good morning, everyone. It is the morning still, right? My name is Larry McDonough. I'm going to start us off today. We've got two other distinguished speakers up here that'll introduce themselves as we get going. Today we're going to talk about built for BlackBerry applications and how they integrate with, or how you can integrate with payment services to ensure that your applications meet built for BlackBerry. Yesterday I spoke on this actually same stage with, was it Shadid, talking about the invocation framework and how important that is. And it's perhaps the easiest of all the services to integrate with, but perhaps the most important in the sense that it increases engagement. So that's the invocation framework, right? Because it allows your application to feel like it's part of the operating system, or part of the flow of BlackBerry 10. Payment services, on the other hand, is the one where you make the money, right? So this is how you monetize your application, and you really need both. So if you're looking for a build for BlackBerry, I strongly suggest you consider invocation framework and payment services together, right? So those two are really key. So what we'll do is we have a couple different sections of our talk. We'll be switching the microphone back and forth, so to speak. In this first section, we're going to talk about how the payment services is sort of presented to the user and some of the advantages and disadvantages, or not disadvantages, but the things to do and things not to do in this particular case. So let's look at the payment service. So, why would you use this, and what's important? Right? Of course, we want to make money, but there's other ways of getting money into your application. You could use a third-party payment service, for instance, right? But I strongly suggest you don't do that, and this slide sort of outlines why. First thing is your users are going to be your customers are going to be not only buying applications or digital goods from your app, right? They're going to be buying these digital goods on other applications as well. So if you're using the payment services that comes with our platform, they're going to be familiar with it. So that's really important. Not presented with a new screen, and this is now logging into Joe Blow payment service. Type in your credit card number, and maybe people get a little bit nervous about stuff like that. So it's familiar and it's built in. And the other thing is it's integrated tightly with BlackBerry ID. So once you log into BlackBerry ID in order to make the service or to purchase, you have to do that. And once you log in once, they can log in another app to buy some other good, then start your app, and then buy a good inside your application. They don't have to re-log in again. It's just familiar. They've already logged in once. They can just buy immediately. There are some controls inside the device itself. So if users, for parental protection purposes, enforce the login on each purchase, whatever, that's fine. That's them controlling that. But if you got a user that wants to, has an open checkbook, those are the ones we want to get. This makes it really easy for them. The second reason is it's trusted, right? So that we're going to take care of protecting the consumer's privacy, your privacy, your any important information that you're trying to secure. The payment will be trusted. The funds will flow in the right direction, and bad things won't happen. Talked about how it's integrated with the OS, but not only does it help make the your application feel more integrated to the operating system or to the device, it also just increases the possibility that they're going to keep coming back, right? Because there's fewer and fewer pop-ups that they're going to have, right? So if they already logged in once and they're buying some coins to up some ability to buy new capabilities in the game, or whatever it is that you're selling, whatever your digital good is, and we'll talk about some of these different types of digital goods later. Whatever that is, they'll be able to just keep going, keep flowing through your application and not be prompted and stop. And the last thing is, if you're using the payment service, you're going to have all this payment information just saved and readily available for you. So let's look at what some of these, what the user's presented with. So there's, up here you kind of see, it's really the same confirmation screen, but on the left you see one where the developer didn't put very much information into the digital good, right? So you get sort of this default icon, you get sort of a default SKU number that we can pull out of the system to give them. It's not very descriptive. On the right, however, you have a purchase confirmation, and the way the payment system works is this is pretty much the only UI that the user sees, right? So we could put up a flow and show, you're requesting the payment service to make a payment, then, they check for login, and then if the person's logged in, they go right to this, right? They make the payment. So this is pretty much the first time they see anything. On the screen on the right, or the screenshot there, that's the case where the developer actually, puts in a meaningful icon. It might mean something in the game. Maybe they're buying 100 energy points or something like that, right? And you can see who it's from, right? It's much more friendly. So we highly recommend, and when Garrett talks, he'll talk about how easy it is to just fill these fields, and make sure that they get the good icon. What does that mean? Make sure they have good information about the product, and what does that mean? So it's very key to do that. So one of the things that we'd like to talk about are consumable goods. Consumable goods are goods that you can buy over and over and over and over again, not just once. And the beautiful thing, there's a couple good things, some good things for developers and some good things for users that we do. And we often like to recommend, people come to us all the time and ask us how, what type of payment service, should I use? Or how do I do freemium, that kind of thing. So in some of these things we'll tease out for you, right, as we go through this talk. But in consumable good, you're talking about that case where the digital good can be bought over and over. So those are really great ones, right? So you can get engagement, you can continue to monetize rather than just a single upfront purchase. For the developer, the nice thing about consumable goods is that you just have one SKU per price tier. So you can, for instance, the example here is let's say I'm a bookseller, and I have 99-cent books, I've got $199 books, and I've got, some other, $12 books or whatever. I can just create one SKU for each of those price tiers, right? And then it's much, much easier for me to manage with fewer SKUs. And you'll kind of get to see why that's the case when we get to some of the code examples. But if you have a bunch of books, and all your books that are 99 cents, all have different titles, how do you differentiate them later? So, gosh, did I sell, who did I actually sell this book to? Or does that consumer already own this book? So I don't want to sell it to them again. Or if I want to sell it to them again, I got to make sure they know that they bought it before, or that kind of thing. So you can differentiate your products through some metadata. So if it is a book, for instance, just taking this example, in the metadata, you could put anything. You could put any string you would like there, but you could also put a string that you can parse later and pull out interesting stuff if you want, like the title of the book, the author, whether it's hardback or whatever, used, new, those kinds of things you can put in there and pull them back out again, so that later if you want to show them an inventory of what they bought, you can fill it out more nicely. Then for the user, the advantage of consumable goods is that each good does appear unique to them. So even though it was easy for you to do, to manage with just a single SKU, they get to see that it looks like a separate purchase, and it doesn't, some of the advantages that you think you might lose by using this type are not lost. They're still there. So they get a unique name, a unique icon, and Garrett will talk more about that.
Thanks. All right. See code on the screen. That means it's time for me to come up. So, hi everyone. My name is Garrett Bukabu. I'm part of the developer relations team, and part of the app ecosystem that I'm involved with pretty heavily is payment services. So, right here up on screen, I'm going to talk a bit about kind of the theory that Larry was bringing up. It's basically specifying your own app icon. Now, I say app/good icon because really, if you make this call more than once, you can actually change that icon that you see in the purchase screen to be representative not just of your application, but of the digital good that the user is buying. So in that screenshot that Larry had up there of the purchase, and you're buying the energy cubes, the icon was actually an icon of the application. Depending on what you're doing within your application, you could actually change this prior to a purchase and change it to an icon that represents the digital good that the user is buying. Just to give it a little bit more context, take it one step further than what was shown in the example. And as you can see here, it's very, very easy to do. You just one call. It's static on the payment manager, so you'll have one payment manager for your application. You make this call before you make a purchase. The image specification is 100 by 100. It'll scale down if it's any bigger than that. And we support all the major image formats, so GIF, PNG, JPEG. And then as well, if you do have that consumable good, things that you want to take into consideration when you are requesting that purchase is putting in, first of all, the SKU. Of course, you're going to need that. That's a requirement. That's how the payment system knows what you're selling to the user. The next thing you pass in is the name of the digital good. Because you might have one digital good in the vendor portal, which represents 1,000 different books, you really want to make sure that you put the name of the book that the user's buying so that when they're presented with the payment purchase screen, they've got that context awareness of what they're actually buying. And then the final parameter, made a potato cannon in this case, is that metadata so that when you retrieve the past purchases, this will be part of those purchase replies, part of the receipt that you can then parse out within the application. So really you can put any sort of string in here you'd like. You can put some more information in there about the book that they're purchasing, as long as your application knows how to read that data out. So it would be a consistent format for every single digital good that you're selling. And then the application name. By default, what the payment system does is it grabs the application name based out of the bar file. So we'll present that to the user. If for some reason you wanted to make a slight change to the way the name appears to the end user, you can make a change here. And again, that's statically set. You just set it once to the payment manager in Cascades. Very, very easy to do. Just pass in a string. Flipping over to the WebWorks side of things, things happen a little bit differently than with the Cascades. So for example, as you can see here, we're doing everything in one call all at once. So we're passing in the digital good name, the metadata, the app name, and the purchase icon all in every single purchase request. So we're passing that in. Just a little bit different way of handling it. All the functionality is still there, just in a different call. One other thing I just wanted to point out, as you can see here, the purchase icon is actually a URL. Some of you may not have servers. Some of you may not have dedicated servers to host your application icon. The app icon, by default, will try to be retrieved from the app itself. If it can't pull it out for some reason, one thing that some people have done in the past, which is kind of cool, is go to the BlackBerry World web server, and you can actually take your app icon from there or a graphic from there and reference that. So let BlackBerry World serve it for you, and then you can just reference it that way. All right, and we're back over to Larry.
Okay, so who here doesn't want to cash in? Right? No hands, good. All right, so someone had to make that pun, right? We're in a payment service thing. We're using the word cash, but of course we're spelling it wrong, sort of. So, of course, with this spelling, we're talking about how do we cash purchases. So current purchases, past purchases, and prices, things like that. Why is that important? Why are we talking about that? Well, this is something that we've just recently exposed, is this concept of caching. It's been in our payments services framework for a while, but we've recently made this available to you guys, so we thought we'd talk a little bit about it, and Garrett, of course, will show you the code samples of how to do it. So what is caching? Of course, it's storing some local data for you so you don't all have to go off to the server, right? That's what it means. We do that in lots of instances. In sort of the payment or purchasing process, you can cache current purchases yourself, just using your own local storage if you like. In Cascades, you use your queue settings, or in WebWorks, it's just standard HTML5 local settings to save what you're doing. But if you want to retrieve sort of past purchases, you could go retrieve that yourself and store stuff up on the cloud somewhere, and then worry about managing all that yourself and keeping that in sync with BlackBerry World. Or you can just leverage BlackBerry World's caching service. So, and we'll kind of walk you through how to do that. It's pretty cool, and it has some great benefits. So, basic idea though is you just request, the purchases that this user has made in the past, and you get this big, key value pair back, so you can easily parse what they have, what they've already bought, so you know, right? And that's really important to know what they've already had before. And also, you often might ask, how do I know what all these things cost? What's the best way to display them? How do I get this information? Can I grab just a single one? Can I grab them all? And it's pretty easy to do, actually. If you think about this from the sort of with putting some more graphics on the screen, essentially, from BlackBerry World, the BlackBerry World client, from the way the user sees it, they can very easily see, most of us know, right? We can go to My World and BlackBerry World and we can see what we bought before, right? So the BlackBerry World client manages all this information for you or for the consumer, right? But you as a developer also, can make requests into that service through sort of some code samples that Garrett will show you and get back information that's the same information that the BlackBerry World client receives. This can include, all past purchases, purchases even made on other devices, right? So if you had a 9900 before and you just, you bought app XYZ and now you go to a Z10. Notice I said Z for my Canadian friends. So you purchase the new device. Those types of previous purchases are reconciled, right? So and that information can programmatically be retrieved for you guys as well, so you can work that out. And all the user data is stored somewhere else, right? So it's not actually on the device or in the client. The same is true for prices. So in BlackBerry World, if you're looking at the actual client, you get to see your application showing up here. All the information is available. What can they purchase? What all the prices are visible. But what's nice is everything's also cached for you through the client, and then you can make requests into the client from your application. And that's where the real advantage comes. So instead of going back to the payment service all the time, you can get quick information about what you have, and then the system itself, the payment services, make sure everything is in sync for you. You get back the app name, icon, all this kind of stuff. So it's a very valuable utility.
Okay. So first, I just wanted to point out that I am wearing a Q10 shirt because I didn't want to stir up any controversy with the American-Canadian connection I know we have in the audience. All right. So looking into purchase caching, one of the things that a lot of people have questions about is, I make a purchase. How do I store it on the device? They think that, file management, I don't know about you, but to me, it seems like this big kind of scary thing. You open up streams, you write out to the file system, you read back in. It's not always necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do. However, with Cascades and HTML5, there are some very, very simple utilities that you can take advantage of that will allow you to store all this purchase information very, very easily in the file system, as well as retrieve that back out. So in the Cascades example, we're using the Qt API of QSettings. Now, what QSettings does is it creates a file on the file system in a specific directory, nothing that you as a developer even need to worry about because it's all taken care of for you by the underlying API. And it allows you to save data in key value pairs. Now, you can get a little bit more complex, but in this case, we're just going to stick key value pairs because it's simple to see, simple to understand, and very, very simple to implement. So we start off QSettings, top left-hand corner. We just create an instance of the object. Next thing we do, QSettings, our QSettings object, m_goodstore.setValue. We'd pass in the SKU as an example. So if our SKU was the potato cannon we saw in the previous example, we'd pass that in there. And then we might pass in another value. In this case, I'm passing it owned, a string. You can pass in any sort of Q variant there, so Booleans, integers can all be passed in there without any problem. And then if you want, and that's all you have to do. That data is now stored persistently on the device. You reset the device. You start the application up again. That data is still there. So you can easily just read it back out. And the advantage here is that you don't have to make a call to the payment service every time the application starts up to retrieve that information. Yeah, question in the back? It is safe, yeah. So, yeah, very good question. That brings up a really good point. This data is all being stored within the application sandbox. So the same sandbox structure and security structure that protects your application data is going to protect this data. And again, yeah, like I said, it's something that developers, you really don't have to think about because it's all being taken care of by the security system and infrastructure built into the OS. And then if you want to retrieve the goods from the cache, just like you would from a hash table, all you have to do is call our QSettings object, .value. You pass in the SKU that you want to check. So that would be, in this case, if we were doing the making a check on the same good that the user just purchased, we'd pass in the same value as here, so possibly potato cannon. Check to see if it equals, see if it's owned, And if it is, you update your UI, update your settings to present that to the user as an owned object or digital good within the application. So this is the same sort of system you would use for saving settings within your application. I'm just showing how you can kind of take that and use it to store purchase information as well very, very easily. Now, if you happen to start up your application and this queue settings value is empty, so say you go to get value and it doesn't equal owned, it's null, you can make a request either to the payment service client on the device, or you can make a request from the payment server. So as Larry was talking about the example of having the 9900, say the user has the same application on the 9900, and then they move to the Z10, or they have the Z10, they're using them both at the same time, and they make a purchase on the 9900. Say they buy a book. If they move over to the Z10, they want to have that book available, even though the queue settings is going to be empty. So the way you would retrieve that is by making a call to request existing purchases. And what that will do is make a call to the cloud, the BlackBerry World Cloud, and retrieve all past purchases that are tied to that user's BlackBerry ID. So once you get those purchases back, again, you just go through a loop and set the value for every purchase that comes back as owned, and just save that locally on the device. And that way you can kind of sync up and keep everything uniform across devices. Looking at HTML5, again, very, very easy way to do. In this case, we're just using the local storage JavaScript API. This is standard HTML5, nothing specific to BlackBerry. And again, we're just storing the purchase SKU and the value owned. And then if we're going to grab the goods from the cache, local storage get item, and again, we're just passing in the SKU, and we're checking to see if it's owned. And finally, if we're going to get the existing purchases, the only difference here is we're passing in, again, the refresh value, which is a bool, to say whether to try and grab it from cache locally on the device, or whether to try and do a full refresh from the BlackBerry payment service. And then we've just got our two callback methods specified there as well. Now, this is a cool concept here. We talked a bit about how BlackBerry World displays all the payment information, all the different prices. With a marketplace app like BlackBerry World, it makes a lot of sense that you want to have all the prices there and have them all localized. So if you do have an application that displays a lot of different digital goods for sale and you want to present those prices to the end user, you may have noticed that because the system is synchronous, you have to wait for each call to complete, and every call has a basically the time where basically, okay, so your app says, okay, how much is SKU 1? Payment service comes back. Well, it doesn't actually say just a sec. It just kind of waits for a bit. And then the payment service says, hey, BlackBerry World Server, how much is SKU 1? So BlackBerry World Server does its thing, does look up, and then it says, oh, it's 99 cents. And payment service comes back to your app, says it's 99 cents. Your app says, awesome, okay, I'll present that to the end user. In this case, we are localized as well. So that's one of the things I want to point. So if you were to make the same call and you're over in Great Britain, you would see the pound sign come back. That's all handled for you by the system, and you get that value back entirely localized for your application. So now, okay, that's awesome. We've got the first price, but we want to display a whole list of prices for all the different SKUs in our application. As you see here, we've got about 16. So then our app says, hey, how much is SKU 2? And payment service says, okay, just give me a second. I got this. And then, so payment service asks BlackBerry World, how much is SKU 2? And payment, it comes back again. And this is a full loop system. So, you can see kind of the inherent delay there every single time you make a call. And if you're trying to populate all this data to the end user, it can be a little bit slow. So what the BlackBerry World Service team has done is they made a slight change. So with price caching, all you have to do from your application is say how much is, and then you preface cache before the SKU. And then when you make that call, again, payment service, hold up. Payment service makes a special call to the BlackBerry World Server and basically says, this guy's going to need a whole lot of SKUs. Can you tell me every single thing, every single price of every SKU, and I'll hold them for this calling application. So BlackBerry World Server comes back with an entire array of all the different prices. Payment service calls back to your app. To your app, there's no actual difference to the call getting called back, in this case anyways. Says thanks, but when we look at what happens the next time we make the call, again, we're prefacing cache. Payment service doesn't even need to make a call to BlackBerry World Server. It leaves it alone a bit, and it just comes right back with the payment. So in this case, what happens is the BlackBerry payment service That was fast. The payment service is actually going to keep all of this data, all of the prices for all the different SKUs in your application in cache for 30 minutes, which is more than enough to present all those payment options to the end user. So basically, makes the call to cache. Every time you make a call for a new price, you're going to get it immediately back. So it's very, very useful if you're displaying all those prices to the end user. Not that every application needs to do that. Using this, you see, it's as simple as I showed in the previous slide. With no caching, we just request the price. We're specifying the SKU in this case. You need to use the SKU, not the content ID. Content ID won't let you use the caching mechanism. So when we pass the SKU as a second parameter, with no caching, it's just the SKU. With caching, we just preface cache beforehand. So there is to it. So for every single call, you just prefix cache in there, and you will get that caching functionality that has been added to the back-end system. And of course, this is supported across all platforms, and it's just as easy to implement if you're doing in HTML5. So in this case, digital goods SKU, and in the case of caching, we just preface with cache. So of course, there are some times when you would not want to use cache, and there are some times when you should be using cache. So if you have a long list of items, say a marketplace, a whole list of books, cache is very, very good to use because you get all the prices immediately. You can display them immediately to the end user. However, when you're making that call to the BlackBerry payment service and it's making a call to the BlackBerry world, it's going to retrieve a whole list of every single price for every SKU you have up in there. So if for some reason you're not using a lot of the SKUs that are up in your vendor portal, or you don't need to present the prices to the end user, using cache is actually just going to slow down your application. So it's very powerful to use, just you want to make sure that you're using it under the right circumstances, and everything should be good.
All right, so what are the different methods of monetization? Right? A lot of times people ask us, gosh, this is what my app does. How do I know? Do I do freemium? Should I do paid? How do I do this? What's the right method for me? And the answer, as is almost always the right answer for any technical question, I challenge anyone to come up with a question that doesn't have this answer, is it depends. Right? Because there's almost always one case where you could talk about, well, in this crazy world where we don't have gravity, then the answer is such and such, right? So it does depend. So we don't have a single answer for everybody. It depends a lot on what you're doing, what your app does, what you want the experience to be like, things like that. So what we're going to highlight are freemium, which is basically the concept of your app is free initially, right? And then inside the app, the user wants to get more and more content or capabilities or whatever. That's where you start to sell digital goods of some sort so they can then upgrade and pay for things. Another type of freemium is where you actually just have, it's a very similar type actually, but the concept of you can just buy as much stuff as you want once you're inside the application. So actually in the first one, I probably should have said, it's free for a while, you pay once, and then you play forever. The second one, it's free for a while, then when you're inside, you're paying continuously for stuff. That's how those first two differentiate. And the third one might be, this case where you have a really strong brand. Right, and that particular brand can demand some higher, premium type of services or payments for services. We'll give some good examples of that. And the last one is Premium Plus. So the first example, how many people here are familiar with Nobex, the streaming radio clients? Fantastic application, and it's free, right? So you basically can stream, all kinds of different radio stations and content without paying anything, right? So this is a perfect example of that first case, freemium to premium, right? So what happens though is, when do I bump into the case where I have to pay for something? Well, it's when I try to listen to, a station that's not in my geographic region. So I want to listen to, Brazilian, not necessarily Brazilian style music. There might be stations here for that. But if I want to listen to a station in Brazil, like another country's stream. Right? And in that particular case, the way this app chose to monetize is, okay, you want to stream from somewhere else farther away? No problem. You just have to pay for that. Okay, so they present the opportunity to upgrade and basically buy that channel, and then once you buy it, you have it. Right? So it's a good that lasts forever, and you can always listen to that channel. You don't have to keep paying every time you want to download the stream. So that stays with you. And that's one model. Is that the best model? Is it the only model? No, that's just the model they chose, and it's working for them. So we also encourage people to try different models out, not flipping on your user all the time, but do some experiments and find out what you think is going to work best for you. Another interesting thing about Nobex is because they've become because they're built for BlackBerry, it's a very high quality application. They've been noticed by other companies who have a similar type of service that they like to offer. So they actually are now white labeling their radio or channel streaming service to other companies. So they're monetizing kind of on the side for that too. So that's even yet another way to monetize is to build. In fact, I tell developers all the time, always think platform. Don't just think, sort of a silo. Think about a platform. Lots of things can be built on top of a platform. So if you're building something with any type of service, is there a way for other people to use that service, right? And if so, how can I monetize that? And it's a very, very powerful concept, and Nobex is doing an excellent job with their streaming service. Another example of monetizing, sort of that second one, where you have an unbounded, unlimited number of ways to monetize inside your application is this little side-scroller game, Sector Strike, right? So you're playing the game, you're flying around, you're doing stuff. At any point in time, whoa, I need more power, right? So I can buy coins or energy, credits. So in the game, I can just, oh yeah, it's time to whip out my credit card or whatever and buy some more. So, but again, if you're using the payment service, then if they've bought some in the last 30 minutes or been on another application and bought stuff, you can just quickly do that transaction, boom, boom, done, you're on. So the user doesn't lose very much time in the gameplay, and you can get another 99 cents from them, and they just continue to monetize. Is that the right model for your application? Maybe. If this is sort of the experience that makes sense, and you think is it going to keep the engagement, then it would be. But maybe there's other models where that doesn't make sense. Your user just isn't willing to continue to pay to get the next page in the book. Whatever it is, your model might not be something that people are used to. So here's an example of the different kinds of things that they can buy up for in the middle of that game. I didn't see this version of the deck. Okay, so when you confirm the purchase. Okay, so yeah, this is what you would see, and this is an example from the very beginning when we saw the confirmed purchases, right? So in this case, the person decides to buy the energy credits, and you can see what they are. I got 100 energy units there. I'm going to pay $15 for that. That better really help me, kill the bad guys and get through the game. Another style is this is the one where I talk about brand. If you have a premium brand, like the app Trapeze. It's Kinsei, is that who it is? Kinsei, how do you say it? Kasai, that's right, Kasai. Fantastic developer. These are the same guys that wrote the Black application. So their brand and their applications are well known among their users, and they're very, very high quality. So these guys can charge a premium just based on their brand, right? So it's very important for when you're building your application, pay a lot of attention to quality and experience, and you deliver a really, really solid experience for the user. You build a brand for yourself, and they'll start to notice you, and you'll get, be able to get more revenue for your application. And in this example, this particular user maybe have been familiar with Black first, and then found out about Trapeze. So that if you build a name for yourself and build a brand, a strong brand, you'll be able to get that brand will leak and bleed into other applications of yours. So next, I'd like to hand it over to our other panelist or presenter.
Hello, I'm Brian Shire. I wrote the game Visual Connection, as well as had my friend Shane, who happens to be in the audience, help me write it, so quick shout out. I went with a Premium Plus model, so let's pull up the actual game. So the reason we went with Premium Plus, it's a 99-cent game to begin with, because we do offer 400 levels of this puzzle game. You may be familiar with the 4 pictures, 1 word type game. Pretty popular right now. So we had this idea where you could beat the game, you pay 99 cents, and you'll never have to do anything else. However, if you get stuck on level 20 here, and there's 400 levels, you could use some coins to get some hints once you get it wrong. However, you see that he doesn't have 60 coins to get a hint, or I believe skip a level costs a bit more. So that's where we call in payment services. So here, it's a familiar screen where you can see which goods they can purchase, and then once they click on it, they get that screen that looks just like every other app that calls into the payment services, where I have my icon, as well as what good they're buying, in this case 500 coins, the price, and confirm with their credit card or anything like that. And then a little bit more into monetization strategy, more so than payment services, is that you can be social with your app to just draw more users to your game, and then they may get stuck and buy coins from you. So not only should you charge for premium services, but have your users be able to sell for you, and then those new users may buy more premium services. So one last quick thing that I want to say is that Garrett does have an awesome GitHub. Did you write it, Garrett? On
One.
Okay, there's a GitHub on the official BlackBerry that runs through this payment services, and that's what we use. So if you use Cascades, be sure to check that out, and it's almost all written for you, so makes it even easier.
Yeah, there's actually two samples. So one of them is the official payment services sample, which is written up in the Cascades samples repository. And then the other one is a freemium sample that I wrote up for JAM Amsterdam, my last session. And it is under the Cascades community samples. Both of them, the beauty of both of them is that if you're not familiar with C++, they were developed in such a way that the payment services are almost completely controllable from QML. So if you're familiar with JavaScript, if you're not familiar with JavaScript even, it's very, very easy to use them without writing a single line of C++.
All right. Hand it back over to Garrett.
Oh. All right. Cool. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I'm a big user of visual connection. As you can see there, I got stuck on level 20 for a long time. And the sad part about level 20 is you're 3 coins away from being able to get a hint. 3 coins. So every time you beat a level, you get 3 coins, but that level's the one you get stuck on. So you're like at this between a rock and a hard place where you want to buy coins, you want to buy a hint. So you end up actually like going out and spending the money just to get past level 20, and then you zip along until you get stuck again. It's a great game, great time filler. As Brian said, there's 400 levels, so it's not something that you're ever going to get tired of. And I believe you kind of just keep on adding levels as you go on. So yeah, it's loads of fun to time fill. If you got 1 minute or 10 minutes to play it, it's a great game. All right. So moving on to the final section that we have, understanding your users. So we're going to briefly just kind of touch upon carrier billing and analytics. Now, carrier billing to you as a vendor, developer, whatever you like to call yourself, is really a transparent concept. When the user goes to make a purchase within the application, they're presented. You basically say, hey, payment services, this guy wants to purchase digital good X. And then the payment service takes over from there, lets the user pick what digital good they want or what payment service they want to buy, and then they can make the transaction, and your application gets called back with, hey, it was successful, in which case you can give the digital good to the user, or it failed, and here's why it happened to have failed. So you can possibly provide some feedback to the end user. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up carrier billing specifically is because in a lot of countries, credit cards and PayPal aren't very widely used. Some countries, if you ask for a credit card for something, like some of you may be familiar with ordering signature keys a few years back, you'll kind of get all sorts of odd looks. But as soon as carrier billing is turned on, it opens up a whole new audience to you. We've seen in many countries, as soon as carrier billing turns on, which is a carrier-specific feature that we're working with lots of different carriers all the time to add to their portfolio, you could see a sudden spike in sales in that country, which normally you wouldn't be targeting at all. So the main reason I want to bring this up is to let you know that if you're not seeing a whole lot of sales in your freemium application, there are many ways to monetize, even if countries aren't making lots of purchases, such as in-app advertising. But you shouldn't rule out a country just because of low sales. Once that carrier billing comes in, a lot of people that weren't necessarily big purchasers before can all of a sudden make purchases of digital goods within an application or applications that are paid, and just have that come up on their monthly carrier statement, or using a prepaid card, it will just come off their balance. And again, once this becomes available to a specific carrier, it's completely transparent to you, the developer. The only thing you may notice is a spike in sales, and then some more money coming into your bank account every month. So one of the ways you can track that a little bit closer, a little bit more, have a little bit more control over what's happening out in your application with your users is through analytics. So typically you have to wait a while before you get any sort of information from BlackBerry World on your sales. What users are buying your application, where they're from. If you were to implement analytics at a fine level within your application, you get that information within a day. So, say a carrier in South Africa happens to all of a sudden enable digital goods or enable carrier billing, your application can all of a sudden read that back on your dashboard, your analytics dashboard, to read the spike in sales, and then perhaps you can start targeting more closely to that market by making changes, new digital goods within your application. It's very, very powerful to implement analytics in, not just for digital goods sales, but for improving the flow of your application and better understanding what your user base is. So some of the basic things, devices being used, if it's full screen, if it's a QWERTY device, so you can determine if you want to focus on, filling the screen with more content or adding in keyboard shortcuts within your application. Find out how users are navigating your application, and how users are buying things within your application. If they're able to find the store page, if they're having trouble finding it, if they're getting stuck on level 20 and they've got 57 coins and they only need 60 to get to the next level, that sort of stuff. You can see kind of how users are handling that. And currently, we do have a few different analytics choices. So the big announcement that we had just 2 days ago is that we now have Flurry available on our platform. So if you're a Cascades or native developer, you've got Flurry Analytics. It's a completely free service, no matter how many users you've got running your application, however many server calls you want to make in your application. It's completely free, and it's easy to implement on both Cascades and native today. If you're a WebWorks developer, or you want to kind of host your own data server, or you're more familiar with Countly, Countly is another great offer. Today it works on Cascades and WebWorks, so those are your two options there. And then Localytics also has an HTML5 analytics service, which does happen to work very well on BlackBerry 10 as well. So HTML5 developers, you've got a few options. Cascades developers, you've got a few options. And native developers, you can use Flurry as of today. But of course, we're always looking to expand this portfolio to give you as many options as you need. So, all right. Now, this session did actually happen yesterday, but if you do have any more questions about analytics, if you want to get a bit more information about Flurry-specific analytics and integrating that into your Cascades or native application, JAM08, all of these JAM sessions will be recorded and available for playback from the session catalog that you might have gone through already to pick out your sessions. So if you want to go back, you can take a look at JAM08 and get an overview of how analytics can be used within your application. All right, so thanks, everyone. And I want to give a special shout-out to Brian for coming up on stage and talking about visual connection. If anyone has any questions, please just come up to the mic. That way the people that are on the recording can hear what you're asking, and I don't have to repeat it for them. Thanks.
So I have one monetization strategy question that was not covered, but may be an increasingly common model, and I'm wondering what the payment service can do to support it. And that's the idea of a free app for accessing a paid service. So you have an in-app purchase, but ultimately what has to acknowledge that this purchase is valid and successful is not the app but some external service the app communicates with. So that external service needs to be able to validate the app world or the BlackBerry world transaction. And I know in the past you had a dynamic license model in the payment service that looked like it could have been used for that, but there wasn't a lot of detail. And I'm wondering what you currently have that could support that approach.
Right. All right, that's a really good question. It's one that we're getting increasingly more often, moving to BlackBerry 10. And as you kind of pointed out, dynamic licensing can be used for that. It's not what it was meant for, but it is one option that you can do to use that today. We are working on getting server APIs, so server access to the BlackBerry World Payment Service. So basically, the app makes a purchase. It would tell your server, hey, I bought this. Then your server could query the BlackBerry World server, get a transaction log, and then read that back. So that's something that we're working on getting out there. It's currently very not early stage. We just need to kind of do some more fleshing out of the solution, and then hopefully we'll have that within a couple months.
That sounds good. Yeah, I've heard that like the way Google Play handles it is actually where they'll send the app a cryptographically signed receipt that can then be validated. But if it's something that can be done directly between the remote service and BlackBerry World without all that complexity and the corner cases, that would certainly be a better solution if you can do it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, real quick before you ask your question.
Okay.
I want to mention one thing about visual connection that I forgot to say, is that integrating with payment services is one of the requirements or one of the pieces that help you get Built for BlackBerry certification, which to extend on the payment or monetization in general, Built for BlackBerry offers plenty of other BlackBerry World high placement, carousel placement, so a lot of good things come along with that, which will then lead to more sales and more in-app payments. So just another thing to consider when integrating this service, that it can help you get this certification as well. So go ahead with your question.
Okay, you just responded to my question.
Oh, look at that.
I am Frank Alves from MasterCard. So, and my question was exactly that: how you connected to the payment gateways? Do you have gateways that serve you? And they responded that every application should be integrated to whatever place local gateway you guys have, right? That's if I understand correctly.
Right. It sounds like you're asking more about the actual payment gateway between the payment service and whatever sort of portal is being used to charge the user. So PayPal, MasterCard, carrier gateway. And that's a little bit more behind the scenes. So most developers, when they're developing an application that uses a payment service, don't need to worry about that complexity. It's taken care of by the BlackBerry payment services. If you're using something like a MasterCard and you're looking at like an NFC payment, is that kind of what you're looking at?
No, no.
Or
in general,
just
for the gateway, NFC not necessarily goes to the gateway, but could go to the acquirer directly, you know. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So all of that is kind of handled behind the scenes with the built-in payment service on the device. So as a developer, if you're developing an application, you don't really need to worry about how the payment service talks to MasterCard or PayPal in order to validate the purchase. You just get a response back that says it was successful or it happened to fail.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hi. Is payment integration available for apps and solutions on other platforms with your payment gateway services?
So other platforms, so you're looking, sorry, can you elaborate a bit more?
Okay, I'm from a carrier, and we may have other apps or app or solution deployed on our network that want to leverage the payment services that you have.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, if
it's not a BlackBerry app.
Oh, an Apple? Oh, okay, yeah.
An app on maybe an Android.
And, okay, so all these payment services are specifically just to BlackBerry.
Okay.
So it's all BlackBerry ID integrated. The payment services are all tied to your BlackBerry ID. All the records are all BlackBerry records of purchases. So it's its own system specifically for BlackBerry.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I'll follow up actually on his question, and then I've got another of my own. In 10.2, I think the BlackBerry Jam keynote said BlackBerry ID will be sort of exposed to us finally in apps. That was up there as one of the coming features. Maybe
Yes.
not 10.2, but it's coming.
It's something that's coming out there to be exposed. Yes.
Is that anything that might eventually support other platforms, PCs, whatever, connecting to the BBID authentication and then potentially using the payment system as well?
Nothing has been announced.
Okay.
I'm going to give my PR answer. It's nothing that we've kind of talked about. Right now, I think the idea is so that applications can authenticate the user based on their BBID and identify the unique user based on that information. But yeah.
Okay. Question I had was, I think I first looked at the state of the analytics stuff for BB10 around last summer. I got the impression that there wasn't really anything at the time, I think, and I got the impression from the documentation there that we were sort of waiting for either BlackBerry branded or partner service of some sort that was coming. Now I see that you're basically adding what look like APIs to existing third-party analytics systems. Is there another component that's still going to come, or is this sort of the strategy now?
This is kind of the strategy going forward. We found with most developers, they're more married to a specific analytics platform than they are to just having analytics for BlackBerry. So it's more of a case of if there were a white label solution, then basically all of your analytics for BlackBerry would be in one portal, and then if you have applications on other devices or the analytics platform, if there was a BlackBerry specific platform, it may not provide what you're looking for. So instead of providing BlackBerry specific APIs, we're kind of making it as easy as possible, partnering with the analytics providers and giving you the documentation you need to very easily integrate their solutions into your application, giving you flexibility to choose different SDK options, and then also being able to take all of your analytics from different platforms and combine them into one dashboard, giving you one spot to look in and get them.
Okay, so it looks like at least the current state of things then is that there's no single service which supports all the different SDKs on BlackBerry 10. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So that's something that we're actually working on. Like I said, with Flurry, it was just announced. We got it at the door for Cascades and Native. But the beauty about Cascades and Native is that those same APIs are exposed to Air and WebWorks as well because of the way the stack exists on BlackBerry 10. So those are future considerations for those. So hopefully once we get everything ported over to Cordova, the potential is there to have an extension for Flurry to Cordova applications.
Okay, and so to finalize on that, would you go so far as to say that Flurry may become effectively the recommended platform for if you need to support across all the SDKs for BlackBerry 10?
The plan is to have a list of analytics partners that we can recommend. So instead of having one that we're saying, use this, it will be more of, here's a list of platforms. Choose the one that's right for you.
Okay, thanks.
And if you think about it, that's kind of been our strategy with many other things, similar types of problems, right? We'll present you with the top, other choices and allow you, the developer, to pick which ones you want to use.
Hi, I'm Brian Irvin from Nashville, developer. I've got a few games on BlackBerry World. If any of you want to check them out, Jack Jack and Bumble Me, just for a few. But I'm an Air developer, and I didn't hear anything about Air in this presentation. Is there an implementation of these payment services for Air developers, and where can I get detailed information?
There absolutely are payment services. So Air, as some of you may recall, if you started back in the Playbook days, was the way to develop applications back on Playbook. So Air was actually one of the first. Air and Native were the first two that received payment services support. So if you go to BlackBerry or developer.blackberry.com/Air, under the API reference, there's documentation for how to implement payment services in your Air applications. And like I said, it's been around since Playbook OS as well. So the API hasn't changed. So there's lots of samples out there as well.
It's a good comment. We might have, perhaps in the future, we'll do the Cascades, HTML5, and Air API demo real quick, or code samples anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the first time I touch the payment service, so I want to ask, do we have a test server or test account we can do this?
Yeah, good question. So there are a few different modes for testing. Today there's what's called local mode, where basically from your client, if you sideload that on, if you're just testing it out, if you set test mode to enabled, when you go to make a purchase, instead of it going out to BlackBerry World, it just stays with the payment service, and then you get a fake response message. So we didn't cover it in this session. The previous sessions from the previous jams, I kind of had screenshots, talked a bit more about it. So you can go back and reference those. Or we also have a couple of really good some documentation, some blogs that cover over the different testing strategies. But basically what it gives you as a developer the ability to do is choose what response you want your application to receive, and then your application, you can verify that it handles it okay. The next step is we have a sandbox with our BlackBerry world. Basically, you can take your BlackBerry ID, put it in the sandbox. You can put your application up there, download it without it being exposed to external users, and then make payment tests that you won't get charged for.
Yeah, in fact, the really good source for that, I'll just put a plug in for Garrett's blog. So Garrett in BlackBerry Dev blog, he's got a couple of blogs, and one of them targets all about what he's just talking about, the testing framework.
Yeah. Okay. So if you go to devblog.blackberry.com, you search sandbox, the first article that comes up should be written by me. Okay. Thanks, Larry.
For the business models, does the app will support a subscribe, like month's payment?
Yes. Yeah, so right now it supports subscription on 2 levels, or two intervals, either 7-day or 30-day subscriptions, and those will automatically be charged to the user every 7 or 30 days, and they get the UI. And you can also have an initial period which is the same price or lower. So if you want to have free for 60 days and then start charging them after that, you can do that as well.
Hey, I'm Sanjay from MacSecure. We've created the first antivirus for BB10. Wanted to kind of find out how to create the freemium model. Right now it's selling for $10, and wanted to figure out if we can still take it and do a freemium model on that, or do we have to create another SKU for that?
Currently, I definitely recommend. You have to have a separate SKU. You have to, because if you switch from paid to freemium, then anyone that's paid for the application would basically end up with a free application. Basically, have just lost whatever money they've put into it. So yeah, currently separate SKU, and then kind of work in-app payments into that.
Okay. Well, we are adding some more features in there, like a secure browser and encrypted contact backups in that security suite. So we wanted to kind of give parts of the antivirus free and then keep adding those as...
That's good. Yeah, I was going to make a comment about that. If you're going to switch models,
sure,
right, make sure that you change the value some way, okay, right? Because otherwise you have a feel like, you'll create a negative
sure,
impression in your consumer,
sure,
of course, right, customer.
Sure.
So,
okay,
yeah, it's very important.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. We are trying to implement auto-renew subscriptions in our applications. And we see that right now, if we are correct, the only options are 7 days or 1 month, whereas there's a conflict with our business model over there because we do quarterly or yearly. So there's a way we can customize auto-renew subscription to adapt to what our business is trying to provide to customers.
Currently, with the built-in subscription service, no, that's not available. And again, that's something that we had a few requests for. It's something that the Apple team is looking into, is kind of a way to change the intervals, but today it's 7 and 30 days. But again, the more requests we get, the more weight we add to that request, and hopefully we'll get that.
So is there a roadmap available for that?
Not for payment services. That would be something that's kind of more in the planning stages, but as soon as something's announced, that's where we go on devblog.blackberry.com and we let everyone know. So,
okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Garrett, I was actually in the BlackBerry World session yesterday. I don't remember the specifics, but if you, the fellow who just asked, if he goes and listens to the videos next week or whenever they come out for that session, whoever was leading that did talk specifically about adding longer ones. I don't remember the details, but he mentioned something like 3 months in a year.
Oh.
So don't recall if it was a commitment or just pretty much like your answer, but he should go listen to the video.
All right, thanks. I think we're just about out of time. Thanks, Peter. So that would be Paul Hainsworth. He'd probably be the one that was giving that talk yesterday. So if you check out the session catalog, the recordings, it should be available likely early next week. You can kind of go over that payment session and see if he gave any more specifics on timelines for when that might be coming out. Great. So again, thank you everyone for attending. If you have any more questions, we'll be kind of hanging around this session for the rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you.